I knew silence was the cruelest weapon because it left no visible scars, only a slow erosion of the soul. If you're still here, don't just watch, subscribe. You'll want to hear the rest, I promise. The great hall of the Somerset Club in Boston smelled of aged leather, single malt whiskey, and hypocrisy. It was the scent of money and frozen time, a rich, suffocating blend that had been making me nauseous since I arrived. I sat at a round table, far from the center, yet close enough that my gaze didn't have to travel more than 50 feet to reach its target, my father, Oliver King. He was celebrating his 70th birthday, a milestone, a social triumph. The guests were a wall of well-cut tweed and cold silk, familiar faces whose creases I had spent 2 decades deciphering, searching for the truth they all pretended to ignore. They looked at him, the patriarch, the man who had done everything for his city, for his family, a myth carved in white marble. Clutched in my hand, beneath the carefully chosen black satin glove, I could feel the paper. Not the elegant paper of an invitation, but the rough, archived, almost brittle paper of an official document. I gripped it so tightly I feared the ink would bleed through the thin fabric and stain my skin. It was my anchor. It was the end. I looked up at the coffered ceiling, where crystal chandeliers cast a yellow, flattering light on the faces below. Even the light here lied, softening the edges, erasing the shadows. I saw, for a heartbeat, the harsh light of our kitchen 20 years ago. My mother, Grace, standing by the island, a glass of water in her hand, her eyes red. She was so beautiful, even when she was broken. "Are you sure you're all right, Daisy?" The voice came from my right. It was Amelia Jones, one of my father's associates, her overly wide smile fixed by cosmetic surgery. "Perfectly fine, Amelia," I replied, my voice measured, polite, so low she had to lean in to hear it. I had learned that discretion was the best form of aggression. People only hear what they need to hear. My father, seated at the head table, laughed. A deep, resonant laugh, the kind that fills the space and demands attention. His suit was a Savile Row masterpiece, and his face, tanned from a recent trip, displayed only one emotion: contentment. He was the kind of man who never knew the cold, even in the depths of a Boston winter, because he always had someone to light a fire for him. I thought back to my mother, to her last week. The silences had become longer than the conversations. There was the sound of dishes being put away, the whistle of the central heating, and then that silence expanding between them. A silence filled with unsaid accusations, unconfirmed fears. One night, I was 13, and I came downstairs for a glass of water. The door to my father's study was ajar. Mum was there, her elegant back stiff. I remember the smell of burning paper. Documents, no doubt, or perhaps a letter. I never knew. "You can't do this to me, Oliver," she had whispered. Her voice was like crushed glass. He had answered her, calmly. That calmness that had always been the cloak under which he hid his rage. "It's already done, Grace. There's no going back." She disappeared 2 days later. We told everyone she had gone to find herself, that she needed a change of air. The official version, the one accepted by society and by my brother. My brother. Leo King. He stood up at that very moment. He was at the center of the head table, next to my father, the favorite son, the heir. Leo was taller than Oliver, but he had the same piercing blue eyes, the same predatory assurance. He lightly tapped his glass with his spoon, the crystalline sound immediately dominating the murmur of the crowd. Silence fell, the kind of tense, palpable silence where you can hear your own blood circulating. Leo smiled, a warm smile, sincere on the surface, but which I knew to be hollow. He was a man of pretense, Leo. He had inherited the art of deception from our father, but without the subtlety. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice resonating, amplified just enough by the microphone a waiter had slipped him. "We are celebrating 70 years of a life lived with integrity, with courage, with love." My heart began to pound against my ribcage, the dull acceleration I knew well, the same I felt in the moments before a car crash. I clenched my fist. The paper in my hand crinkled softly. Leo continued, raising his glass. I could talk for hours about his professional achievements, his charitable foundations, but tonight I want to talk about the man, my father, the man who set an example of unwavering morality for both Daisy and me, who taught us that honor is the only currency that matters. Leo paused dramatically, his eyes sweeping the assembly, stopping briefly on me. He lifted his shoulders, a falsely humble gesture. I stand here today, before all of you, not just to raise my glass, but to thank him for raising us right, for giving us the moral compass that still guides us today. To you, Dad, to Oliver. A thunder of applause erupted. The noise was deafening, a wall of congratulations that seemed intent on burying the past. People stood up, applauding the man who had done everything right. Oliver King smiled, his eyes shining with a satisfaction so pure, so devoid of guilt, that it was almost a work of art. He took a sip of his champagne, the very picture of the triumphant, ideal father. This was the moment. No drama, just the cold of truth against the warmth of the lie. I placed my hand on the edge of the table. The pressure of the wood under my palm was real, solid. The contrast with the unreality of the scene was violent. I inhaled, not to calm myself, but to fill myself with the stale, expensive air of the room. I removed my glove, revealing the paleness of my skin. The paper, my anchor, was there. I stood up. My movement was neither fast nor chaotic. It was slow, precise, like the needle of a seismograph recording an impending earthquake. The crowd was still buzzing, but a few heads turned towards me. Amelia, again, looked at me, her previous smile frozen, replaced by an expression of polite irritation. Leo King saw me. His smile vanished by 2 millimeters, a micro-expression that only a family member would detect. He knew, in that instant, that the game was over. "Excuse me," I said. My voice, without a microphone, was clear but not loud, just enough for those still applauding to fall silent, curious as to what the always discreet daughter had to say. Oliver King, the father, turned his gaze to me. His face froze, his smile died. There was no anger in his eyes, not yet. Just the glacial recognition of a plan falling apart. I walked towards the center of the room, a slow stride on the Persian rug. I reached the ideal distance. Oliver's look was now a silent warning. Leo's face was white. "It's true, Leo," I said, turning to my brother first, then to my father. "Dad raised us very well. He taught you how to conceal, how to pretend the truth was whatever he decided it was. And he taught me how to wait." I opened the paper. It was a photocopy, folded twice, dated 20 years ago. The rough paper that had been my constant companion throughout all those years of waiting. "I'm not going to make a toast," I continued. I felt the weight of every gaze. "I'm going to read a document. Something I could only find because Mom, Grace King, was so methodical." I deciphered the first line, the coldness of the police report clashing violently with the forced warmth and gaiety of the Somerset Club. "This," I said, holding up the paper. "This is the statement recorded at the Boston Police Department, dated October 12th. My father moved, a slight hand gesture toward an imaginary bodyguard. There was none. He could do nothing, not in front of so many witnesses. I began to read. I fear for my safety. My husband, Oliver King, has become threatening and warned me that if I attempt to make public the financial transactions concerning the Carter Trust, Grace's family trust, he will ensure I disappear. He said, "You will be nothing more than a blurred memory, Grace. I will drive your own daughter mad if she seeks the truth." A whisper arose in the crowd, a small sound, like a wave breaking a dam. Oliver King did not speak. He straightened up. I continued. My voice was a monotone, devoid of emotion, as if I were reading a weather report, but every word was a nail in the coffin of the image he had constructed. I flashed back to the memory that had started everything. 4 days after Mom left, Dad had organized a small family meeting, just Leo and me. "Your mother chose to leave us," he had said, his tone neutral. "She was unstable, as you know. She needed help we couldn't give her. She will return when she is ready." Leo had nodded, his 13 years not yet ready to face the complexity of the lie. But I was 13 and a half, and I had seen her fear. I had seen her hands tremble when she gave me an old anonymous key just hours before she disappeared. Flashback. The key in my child's hand, cold, smooth. "It's the key to the truth, my darling. Never lose it. Use it when you are strong." Her voice was a whisper. I hadn't understood. I had hidden it in my jewelry box. The key didn't open a door, but a post office box in another city, which my mother used for private correspondence. It was there, 10 years later, while sifting through bank documents, that I found the police report number and the officer's name. I returned to reading, louder this time, ignoring Oliver's faint, "Daisy, stop." She went on to state that there was a major dispute over the misappropriation of funds from the Carter Trust and that King planned to liquidate it to cover his gambling debts. She provided bank evidence that has been archived under file number 45C. My father stood up. He was a tall, imposing man, and the mere act of him standing commanded silence. "I believe that is enough," he said, his voice low, his usual calm restored, but with a razor-sharp edge behind it. "My daughter is indisposed. She never truly accepted her mother's departure." I laughed. A small sound, a bitter laugh that broke my own mask of neutrality. "No, Dad. I never accepted the lie of her departure." I kept reading, because only one sentence remained. The sentence I had discovered just last week, the final twist in my obsessive investigation. Officer Davis closed the statement, noting that Miss King appeared terrified and requested departmental assistance. I sought out that officer. I found him retired in Maine. He told me what happened next. I moved closer to the table. The crowd was petrified, champagne flutes halfway raised. The chandelier lights seemed less flattering, harsher. The next morning, Officer Davis was placed on forced leave. The case was immediately reassigned to an inspector, I said, looking at Oliver. "A man you paid, didn't you, Dad? A man who made the report disappear from public circulation to make it blurred, just as you promised." Leo took a step towards me, his hand outstretched, a plea for reason. "Daisy, please think about what you're doing." I ignored him. I looked at my father, whose jaw was clenched, his face now a mosaic of wrinkles. "What Officer Davis revealed, and what you managed to erase from the final version, was the detail about the car," I whispered. My mother was afraid. She was about to leave for good. She had even left a note for a friend. The memory was sharp, as fresh as the day I found that note. The smell of lavender on the paper, the only scent Oliver couldn't stand. The last thing Officer Davis noted was that my mother left the police station to return home. She had told me not to be afraid. I let the paper drop onto the mahogany table. The sound was faint, but it echoed like a gunshot. "Do you remember, Leo? The night Mom left?" You woke me up. You said she had packed her bags and was gone." Leo said nothing. His eyes were no longer piercing, but tearful, filled with panic. I turned back to the assembly, my voice rising slightly, carrying the weight of 20 years of grief and lies. "My father is a murderer," I said, the words so simple, so commonplace in this elegant setting, that it became grotesque. He didn't lift a finger. He just paid, manipulated, and erased. I let the truth float for a moment. The silence had returned, but it was no longer the silence of respect. It was the silence of horror. My father finally spoke, a low growl. "You are sick, Daisy. You need help." "I know exactly what I'm doing, Dad." I raised my hand, the one that had held the paper. "For 20 years, I waited for the moment when your arrogance would blind you. You never thought I was strong enough. You managed to drive me mad, searching for the truth, but the truth saved me." I turned to Leo, the real torment, the secret that burned me the most. Leo was the man who was collateral damage to the lie, but he was also the one who secured the story. He benefited from the inheritance, the power. He kept silent. "And you, Leo," I said, my voice returning to a whisper. Flashback. 2 years after the disappearance. Leo and I were in the garage. He was throwing out my father's old toolbox. I noticed that one of the wrenches was missing. I asked, "Where is the wrench, Leo?" He looked at the empty spot, then looked at me, his face expressionless. "It wasn't there. Dad must have thrown it away. He said Mom took her things." But Mom never took tools. She always left the tools. And then, the moment. The coldest moment of my investigation. 6 months after the disappearance. I overheard a conversation between Oliver and his lawyer on the phone a year after the disappearance. Let her fade into oblivion. The insurance is settled. The assets are transferred. And the final piece of the puzzle. The cruelest. Leo regained his composure. He straightened his shoulders. "Enough, Daisy. You are making a fool of yourself. You're hurting us." "That's the right way to raise us, isn't it, Leo?" I said, staring at him. "That's what you learned from Dad." "I just learned to wait." I said nothing more. I didn't need to. The murmurs in the room turned into conversations, exclamations. Phones started coming out. Oliver King's image was shattered. His lie exposed in the harsh light of his daughter's story. The real revelation, the one no one in that room would understand, was the detail I had discovered this very morning. Not that the police report had been erased, but how it had been erased. I took a step back, leaving my father alone at the center of attention, his face turning from white to a violent red. I slipped my hand into my pocket. I felt the cold metal. It wasn't the post office box key. It was the small safety deposit box key from my father's safe. Flashback. My mother, on the last night, she gave me a key. The key to the truth, my darling. It wasn't the post office box key. It was the key to the small safe in his office, where she kept her copies. I had been foolish. I found the post office box key 10 years later while searching the garage. The twist was that Leo knew. The night Mom left, she had left a letter in the safe and the key to her daughter. In the morning, Oliver had forced the safe open, but he hadn't seen the post office box. But he had seen, to his horror, Mom's letter. The inspector paid to erase the case hadn't completely erased it. He had just made it difficult to find. But I found the small detail, the detail that broke my brother. Leo looked at me. His mouth opened to speak, but no sound came out. "I finally found the letter Mom left, Leo," I said, so softly that only he, amidst all the chaos, could hear me. "The letter Dad never found, which I found in the safe. It was for you." Leo's face crumbled, the businessman's mask falling away to reveal the terrified child. She asked you to take care of me, I continued. She asked you to tell me the truth. She wrote that she loved you, that she forgave you. I saw the truth in his eyes. The moment he found the letter and destroyed it. He hadn't just followed Dad, he had chosen wealth. Leo was the bitterest secret. He wasn't just an accomplice. He was my executioner. I smiled, a cold, bloodless smile. I walked past him, ignoring Oliver, who was being surrounded by his panicked associates. I walked towards the door, leaving the chaos behind me. I didn't need legal proof now. I had public doubt and the truth in my brother's heart. The silence was finally broken. True revenge is never the noise. It is the silence that follows the truth, the void you leave behind. If this story still echoes in you, stay. Subscribe. There's always another secret veiled in the dark.